Good morning, Ayin Beis, Volume 3. We're on page 1348, Aleph Shin Mem Ches. And we are continuing, I would say concluding, the Magid's Torah. The Torah of the Magid, the Mizritcha Magid, that began back, that really began in volume 2 all the way in page, just looking up the page, actual. Began on page 790. That's when the Rebbe Rasha began to explain the difference between Torah and Tefillah, which, as I said, Aramim Chelekai HaMelech, bringing down divine transcendence into existence like through Torah, or elevating Aramim Chel Mamata L'mayla from the bottom up, elevating it through Tefillah, through prayer. And that's how he began. He said, Biy'a b'chol sefer ben Tefillah Torah. I'm reading in chapter 384, page 790. To understand the general difference between prayer and Torah, we have to preface with the Magid, the Torah of the Magid on the pasuk form for me or make for me two trumpets, and he explained at length what those chatzetzres were. The two chatzetzres also comes from the word chetzitzura, half of an image, because it's referring to the interface of two half images, the image of the human being below, created in the divine image above, and one reflecting and connecting to the other, complementing each other, the essential theme of Ayin Beis, interface. I'm using that language because he's using that language here, and we'll come back to it in the next page as he concludes this Torah of the Magid. So the whole Torah of the Magid that we're addressing is about the interface between above and below, between the human below, with the so-called image of the human, created the divine image in which the human being was created above, and how they complement each other, and how they connect and unite with one another. In the language used later in Ayin Beis, Havaya, the divine that is beyond, Hu Alikim is the divine as it manifests within existence. Another way of expressing this union. And as we're speaking, it's all mamata l'mayla here, because, in the Torah of the Magid, mamata l'mayla, the Avedas ha-Birurim from below, the neshamas of Biy'a, as it speaks about Admus ha-Kisei, the world of Biy'a, the Kisei from the word mechusa, concealed. So the neshamas of Atzilus, they're connected to the divine. And their Aveda is really drawing down godliness downward into existence. Like we learned, like Shem Ma going into Shem Ban, Yashar, going downward. More like Torah. The Aveda of Neshamas of Biy'a, which is the world of the Kisei, the world of the throne, the world of Biy'a, that's where the divine is concealed, and their souls are bound, nitfas, like we learned, are nitfas in the physical body. Neshama of Atzilus engages with the physical and with the crassness of the physical world, the material world, but is not bound by it. So even though he engages with it, it remains like a garment that's outside of him, like a strange garment like we learned yesterday. And yet he engages, and how does he deal with the concealment of it? By digging deeper and exerting himself with a Mesiras Nefesh that reaches deeper in, and therefore he's able to eliminate that concealment. But Neshamas of Biy'a, though there are also great Neshamas there too, the Aveda is Malmata L'mayla. So first you begin in a state of darkness and concealment, which that brings to a revelation. And there the Aveda is to remove that concealment from the bottom up. And commensurate to the way we refine ourselves and create the kelim from below, that's how the Amshacha comes from above. And that's what we continue learning in the next paragraph on page 1348, that this is the continuation of the words of the Magid. Musa kisei shui is baruch mechusa. The godliness is concealed because we're talking about how it comes into the world of Biy'a, including the macrocosmic Biy'a, which is basically the existence after the Tzimtzum. We're not talking about pre-Tzimtzum and pre-Parsa. In Atzilus, the Klolos, in macrocosm before the Tzimtzum, or Atzilus, the Protis, in microcosm before the Parsa and the partition. And the say, who is Baruch Mechusa? K'moimada Adam. Like the likeness of man. And he explained in the parentheses that here, since the divine is concealed, so our work is to reveal the divine image in which we were created. And that's Ram Shachzet, Allah Osman, by refining the containers. So as we do that, we're able to express. So the Mara Adam, meaning that one is like the likeness of man, but it also, on this kisei, is the likeness of a man, which means there is a likeness even in Biy'a. And that's what our avodah is to reveal it. So in other words, put it in simple English, even though the soul does come down into the body and into this world, and it's bound by it, nitfas, not like it's a neshama of Atzilus. Even though it comes down, it still has a neshama. Like we learned earlier, even the Baal Tshuva that's literally coming from the darkest of the dark has a soul. The soul is never eliminated, except it's concealed and it's bound. But through our work, we are removing the concealment and allowing the soul to be revealed. What is the soul? The soul reveals the divine image, even in the world of Biy'a. That's our avodah. From the bottom up, we should reveal the divine in our lives. And then he continued, and here comes this midah connected midah relationship, that the way we get stimulated and inspired, so too that stimulates and awakens also above. So if by the tzaddik he awakens with love, that in turn causes the love to come downward. It's like kemayim aponim leponim, as we'll soon learn. Just like the water reflects a face, a heart reflects a heart. So when you reach to someone with love, they respond with love. Like words from the heart enter the heart. But here it's more than that. You also get love back. The same thing is between the Adam HaTachton and the Adam HaElyon. That the human being below, the way we behave below, that's the reaction that comes from above. So that's what he's saying here. And the same with all the midas. And that's where we stop. Before I continue, let me just share a story which captures this idea nicely. I must have shared it before, but this is the last night of the Alter Rebbe's life on earth. So we know it was Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, Chavdal Tevis. So it was the Motzei Shabbos Ve'era, Motzei Shabbos Shmos rather, and the night of the beginning of Parsha Ve'era, as the Tzemach Tzedek writes. So that night, the Alter Rebbe passed away after he made Havdalah, around 10:28 in the evening. In Tov Shin Chav Gimel, the 150th Yahrzeit of the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe actually came down to 770, 10:28 that Saturday night. It was the same schedule, and had a farbrengen that began exactly 10:28. So 150 years to the minute, and the Rebbe had a farbrengen, just as an aside. So that Saturday night, you have to remember, this was during the Napoleonic War, the Russo-Franco War, where Napoleon from France had attacked Russia. Alexander is the Tsar of Russia. We know the Alter Rebbe supported Russia in the Russian cause, which is a story of its own. And the Alter Rebbe, because of the situation, had to run from his home, which was in Liadi, where he lived. And he was traveling. There's a whole book actually that talks about his last journeys, the end of his life. So he ended up in Kfar Piyana. Kfar is a city, the town of Piyana. And that's where he would pass away. So the Tzemach Tzedek writes in a letter, that night, before Shabbos ended, it was clear the Alter Rebbe was ailing, and he was weak, and it didn't look like he had a lot of time left. So the Tzemach Tzedek, obviously, who davened for the Amid, he led the davening, Ma'ariv, that Ma'ariv Shabbos, the end of Shabbos, the evening prayer. So the Tzemach Tzedek was quite sad. So when he was davening, you can tell in his voice that he was davening with a certain pain. When he finished davening, the Alter Rebbe called him over. And this may be the last words the Alter Rebbe ever uttered on earth. And he said to Tzemach Tzedek that he heard from the Magid, from his teacher, that Kemar haponim lamata, that's how it is Lamaila. This idea that the face of a person below creates in return a response from the face above. Which means that when you show a happy face below, God shows his happy countenance, shines on you, like a mirror image. And when you show a sad face, that's the face you will receive in return. Tzemach Tzedek has a whole letter on this, where he talks about how our behavior and our attitude, and even our face and our expressions, change destiny. It's not just an external thing. How we act is how we will be acted with. So when you smile to someone, they'll smile back to you. And here we're talking about smiling from heaven. And that was what the Alter Rebbe told him after that Ma'ariv, that he saw him davening with the sadness. Now, mind you, there was plenty of reason to be sad. But still, that was the last message the Alter Rebbe told him. And then a little while later, the Alter Rebbe made Havdalah, and that's when his neshama returned to God, returned to heaven. So that for all things, that's what the Alter Rebbe chose to share. And I just thought it came to mind when we're reading, because it's literally these words. And it's quite a powerful statement. So now we'll continue reading the parentheses where the Rebbe Rashab elaborates and explains this concept. But just to, again, put it into context of Ayin Beis, ultimate interface is this. We are sent to this world, into a dark world, where the divine is concealed, or to use even harsher words from Tanya, it's a world that's mole klippas v'sitra achra, a world filled with shells and the other side. A double and quadrupled darkness, where Rishayim Gevrim by. The wicked dominate in this world. These are all words from Tanya. Chapter 6, later chapter 36, where he talks about how dark the world can be. And I don't know if we need any reminders of that. And our job is from the bottom up, is to not only not to be nispal and not to be affected and impacted by this darkness, but to actually reverse it. Firstly, by not allowing it to affect us, but more importantly, by battling it and bringing light into the world and not allowing ourselves to be deceived by the concealment and convince ourselves God is not here with us. And reversing the process by transforming the darkness, as we learned, by refining ourselves, refining our material lives and the world around us to be kalim and containers for transcendent divine energy, and to climb, not just once, but to do this our entire lives and continue to grow and reverse the process, literally. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu asa kamet tzimtzumim derech kama elamas. That's part of the Torah of the Magid earlier, that God created a number of concealments through many worlds, and the ishtalshelus, like we learned in the previous page, goes into Atzilus, and from Atzilus to Biy'a, and to Yetzirah, Asiya, all the way to this world. And we're reversing it and retracing the steps by making the connections. That is the ultimate interface. Ultimately, the goal is not just Havayu Elikim. That's the key Avodah, is Havayu Elikim. That Havayu Elikim, that the Havaya of divine revelation is one with Elikim, that the divine within existence that's concealed. Like he said, everything in this world that Dvarim shenisava m'shem Elikim. All the matters of this world, all the affairs of this world, and the creations of this world, claim Bereshis bar Elikim. And we want that Elikim, that Gvura and Din and Simtsum to be converted and transformed to Havai. Ultimately, the goal is to reach Ein Oid, where even the very Elikim and the very containers themselves reveal the Helam Ha'atzmi. But the primary Avodah is what we're learning here, is this Avodah Momata L'mayla. And remember, Ein Oid comes at the end, and I emphasize that again, after hundreds of pages of explaining Havaya Elikim. And even in this volume, before he went to Ein Oid, he gave the whole discussion of Mutva, Murgash, Muskel. We climb first from behavioral connection to an emotional one, to a cognitive one, to emotional cognitive one that goes all the way up to gazing at the forehead, at the transcendent Arich and Atik, to the superconscious and higher. And we go through the whole journey all the way upward, all the way to Einoid, where you reach the Hela Ma'atzmi that the Rishima is rooted in, where the Kelim are rooted. But going back to the general picture, it's all about elevating existence and uniting it with God. So now the Maggid is saying, and the Alter Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab is explaining how this union happens, this mirror image. When we do Aveda, we get a direct response. It's a call and response type of thing, cause and effect, action, reaction, or a mirroring that's going on. They talk about mirror neurons, that we mirror neurons within each other, that we feel empathy for one another. The classic example is when you see somebody, let's say, about God forbid, about to close a door on their fingers, you can cry out, ouch, even though you're not, because you identify with them. So here there's a mirror neurons going on. The mirror of our neurons below are impacting the neurons above. So like they say, the way the neurons are fired, that's how they get wired. So our attitudes and our behavior in turn causes a tit for tat, midah connected midah, like I said, a mirror connection, which is how God behaves with us. So in the parentheses, the Rebbe Rashab is now going to explain this in more detail. So I'll read the parentheses, which goes, like I said, it's not a short parentheses, around 15 lines. What is it? Yeah, something like that. 10 lines, actually. And he's introducing another Torah, actually. This is also from the Maggid and from the Baal Shem Tov. V'hu ke'inyan. So I'm reading the line that begins, Kol Hamidas. It's like a little more than halfway down the page 1348. You can find the pages at ayinbeis.com. V'hu ke'inyan Hashem tzilcha. So there's a pasuk that says, Hashem tzilcha, God is your shadow. It's an interesting expression. A shadow usually implies that something is casting that shadow. So you would usually think God is the light and we're the shadow. And here it says the opposite. God is your shadow. Now, of course, literally, tzilcha also means like a shadow, like a protection. Like we speak about a sukkah, is like a cloud of protection. So cloud can also mean a cloud of protection. But the word is shadow. Tzilcha tzel means a shadow. So Chassidus explains, this is a Torah from the Maggid and from the Baal Shem Tov, actually, that God is like your shadow. Just like an object, let's say when you're walking and there's a light shining behind you, so you cast a shadow, so you're the cause and the shadow is the effect. So he's saying that just like a person awakens or stimulates or arouses benafshe in the spirit, kach, just like a shadow which is cast as a result of the entity that's causing the shadow to be cast, so too God Hashem is like a shadow shadowing us, so to speak. How you behave below the nafshe, that's how the awakening from above happens l'mayla. This is sometimes associated with another Torah that you may be familiar with, where it says Dama l'mayla mimoch. So the Pirkei Avos says you should know three things and stay away from sin. One of them is Dama l'mayla mimoch. Know that which is above you. Basically, know that there's the God above you. So the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, I believe as well, interpret that Dama l'mayla, that know that what is above is mimoch, comes from you. So they change the pshat. It's not, God forbid, not the pshat. It's just a deeper way of understanding. Not just know that which is above you. Know that which is above comes from you. You are generating that which is above. There's yet another Torah, if you want to just make more connections. On Kadeshim Tiyu, in the pasuk it says, you shall be sanctified. Kadeshim Tiyu, you shall be sanctified. Why? Ki Kodesh Ani. Because I, God, am sacred. I'm sanctified. So you should basically copy me. So the Medrash says, Kadeshim Tiyu. So you would think that you are Kadosh, that since you're holy like God is holy, you think you're as holy as. So the Medrash says, Kedushasi, it says, you would think that maybe you're as holy as God. So the Medrash says, Kedushasi l'mayla mikdushaschem. My holiness is greater than your holiness. That's the Ki Kodesh Ani. In other words, to say there's still a distinction. The Baal Shem Tov comes and teaches like this. Kedushasi Lamaila, my Kedusha Lamaila is Mikdushas is coming from your Kedusha below. And it's already explained that both are true, because obviously God is higher than, but there's an element of godliness that is directly generated through our effort below. That's how powerful our avodah is. So in other words, okay. Like he writes in Torah Eir from the Alter Rebbe in the Maimer and Chanukah. There's a Maimer Rani V'Simchi. There are two Maimorim there. So Drush Harisha means the first discourse in Torah Eir, where he talks about this idea, Hashem Tzilcha, that the way we awaken things below, that's how they're mirrored above like a shadow. Before I continue, let me just stop, even though we're in the middle of parentheses, because there's more details and I want to go through them slowly, but I'll stop if anybody wants to ask anything. Obviously, I should qualify again. I said it already, but I'll say it again. This is not coming to say, God forbid, that God doesn't exist without us. I mean, I don't want to put it in such blunt terms, because here you come away thinking that universe.
We didn't hear the last few seconds.
Created a universe.
You missed the last few seconds. Yeah, the bad thing for a few seconds.
So I just want to qualify and say the following. It's obviously human beings created in the divine image.
You're still breaking
not that
up.
God. You read in Chumash, God created. Excuse me?
You were breaking up again, but now you just got clear. So let's try. Third time is a charm. Try again, please. I can't hear you at all now. Can everybody else hear him?
I don't either.
We can't hear you at all.
Come back. Come back.
Hello? It's a given.
We can't hear you, Rabbi Jacobson.
We missed the whole, whatever he said last.
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
We lost about a minute of whatever you were saying. You paused and you wanted to clarify something. Then we lost you.
You were talking
So
about
it's very clear that
you're talking about the part where Has v'Shalom, if we don't believe in God.
I know what I was talking about. I'm going to continue. I heard you the first time. I said I heard you the first time. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Good. Yeah, good.
You guys hear me or not?
Yes,
Hello?
we hear you.
Yes,
We
yes,
hear you.
yes, yes, yes.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, good. So I was saying the following. It's a given, it's obvious, and I think it's important. I said it already before, but I'll qualify again. God created the universe, and he created the human being in the divine image, not the other way around, God forbid. What he's saying here is not coming to contradict that, of course, also, God forbid. What he's saying is like this, that God created the universe for a reason. He wants a relationship with us. And as such, he built into existence, and specifically in the Shamas, like we said, Yisrael Olav b'machshava, that human beings and the souls down below will have the power to generate divine energy. So it doesn't want it to be a one-way street where God is the creator and we're just the recipients and we're just the beneficiaries and we're on the receiving end. No, it's a true partnership. So there's 2 points here. First is God created existence, and he created the human being in the divine image. And then he placed the souls down in this world through a whole Seder Shtalshus, as the Magi explains, that he created Osakamet Tzimtzumim Derech Kama Elamis. That's the words of the Magi. He made many tzimtzumim, many concealments, as we've been learning at length. All the concealments and all the parsayas, the partitions and the diminishments. I mean, how many levels are there? Endless levels. All in order what? To do one thing, that we should reverse the process. I actually, you know what? I should read it straight from the words of the Magid, because not all of you probably learned it back then. And it's worthwhile just reading it inside because it's very powerfully stated. I'm just going to read some words of the Magid straight from Ayin Beis. Let me just find it, because it really will be helpful to understand, because everything he's saying now is obviously a continuation of these, as I said, over 500 pages. So he says the following. Give me a moment. Let me find it here. Here. I'm reading on page 832. On in Ayin Beis, volume 2, he says, "V'Hakadosh Baruch Hu." So the Eibishter wanted to have chatzitzuras, which means two half images, the divine and existence. Obviously, he's not talking about the essence of the divine. He's talking about the divine as it manifests in the shtalshlus. He made that very, very clear. That the whole idea is the divine within the shtalshlus. I just want to see that language myself. It's right here, I believe. Just give me a moment. Yeah. So it's talking about in the levels of revelation, he created this partnership, and the whole goal is that God set it all in motion. But we now have an active role, an active partnership role, and that's where it comes in now. So I was going to read. She says, "Hakadosh Baruch Hu asa kamet tzimtzumim derech kama elamis kedei sheyeh achdus im ha'adam." Why did he create all these tzimtzumim through all the worlds? In order for there to be a unity between God and the human being. Because without the tzimtzumim, we would not be able to contain the divine energy. So he needs to conceal in order to reveal. And then he says, continuing on page 834, I'm reading straight from the Torah of the Magid. And a person has to separate himself from the material, from all the material, until he begins to elevate and reverse the process and climb backwards. In other words, climb back up. The tzimtzumim conceal, like I explained, the teacher conceals all the concealments necessary for us to be independent consciousness. But then comes the process of our separating ourselves and not being bound and not being trapped by Gashmias, and we elevate. And then he continues on page 837. And that there should be a unity with God to the point that the person should completely nullify and sublimate themselves as they get consumed, as they get subsumed in the divine. And then he continues on page 847. I'm literally jumping from section to section. And what does he say here? And he says, 847, one second. Tough mem zayin. Tough mem. Sorry, 840. But zikra Adam, and then the person is called an Adam, because remember, the Adam is a representative of being similar to the divine Adam Elyon. And then he goes, V'zeu v'al Musa kishe shu yizbarach mechusasham. And this is the meaning that on the likeness of the kisei, of the throne, where God is concealed. And then he takes us to 896, which is the long parentheses that we just concluded. And then he says, which is already the neshamas of Biy'a. And that's where now we have to go from the work of the darkness till we come to a point of light. So my point that I'm making here is that this is two parts of the story. The first part is how God put it all in place. That's the creation. The second part is how God created Adam and Eve and put them in the garden of the Lashamra, and to reverse the process and climb from the bottom up. And that's where we have the power, because since God envisioned us, he first was the creator and he envisioned us. So now he embedded into existence the power that the way we behave below will in turn affect him. Or you should say the Giluyim of Seder Shtalsus will be impacted by us. So that's part of the system. So just wanted to make it clear that this is not a contradiction at all. It's actually one complements the other. So we learned that length, and he's going to allude to it. He's going to refer to it shortly, that in the beginning, even though our avodas, now that when we do work, God reflects like a mirror image or like a shadow what we do. But in the beginning, it was the other way around. First, God initiated things, and we were a reflection of him. So first, God envisioned us, and then we became created in his image. And then in turn, when we do our Aveda, we in turn enhance the divine image and complete it and elevate it and draw down from it, as he's explaining here. So I just wanted to qualify and make that point very clear. Okay, so it's like a shadow that our Aveda below, the way we stimulate and are inspired and aroused below, that causes an arousal from above. That's essentially the concept of Allah Asman. Asusa dilatata creates an asusa dilela. Now you'll say, it's one thing when two people who are equals, are spouses. So one shows love to the other spouse, so the spouse responds. Call and response, like I said, action and reaction, cause and effect. The same can be parents and children. Children show love to their parents, it elicits love in return, or vice versa. But here we're talking about God. God does not need us, and yet he chose to need us. In volume 2, in Vayikra and Sav of Ayin Beis, he spoke at length how our Avodah, God embedded in our Avodah power that Kav Yochel affects him. So that's important to point out as well, critical to this whole conversation. So he created a situation where we do have impact on him. And we learned about it as well earlier. We even could cause God pain, Kav Yochel, so to speak. We learned that earlier, a number of pages back. So he's basically talking about how our work can stimulate from above. And that's what gives our Avodah so much power. It's not just for us. It also is for the Kavana Elyena, for the higher purpose of making a dir b'tachtenim and drawing godliness downward into our lives. I mean, talking about the 9 days and the destruction of the temple, that's the best example. God could, if we didn't have impact, you could say, hey, so you have sinas chinim, you have baseless hatred. Why should the temple be destroyed? Because the temple is not for God. He doesn't need his presence in this world. It's only to have a partnership with us. If we're not going to be there available for the partnership, his presence cannot be revealed here. You could argue, we behave one way. Why should God's presence have to be concealed? Because the whole presence is predicated on our Avodah that we make of Asili Migdash. You shall make for me a sanctuary, v'shachanti b'seicham. But if you push me out of your life, if you don't leave room for me in if your cup is not empty, or like he says in another place in the Gemara that God says about an arrogant person, I and him cannot be under the same canopy, because an arrogant person is so filled with himself, it's like a full cup. There's no room for anything else. So there's no room for God. Or the way the Kotzker Rebbe once said, they asked him, where is God? He says, wherever you let him in. Where is God? Wherever you let him in. In other words, if you don't let him in, he's not there. Now, that doesn't mean he's not there, period, God forbid, because the etzem of is always there, but not there in any manifest way, in any revealed way. So for there to be a relationship, we have to do our part. And that's why
You froze. That's why.
We lost you again.
You said that's why, and then you froze.
I don't think he can even hear us. He's gone. Yeah, he's totally gone.
I don't
I'm
understand
not
why
even
it's
sure.
so, I don't understand why some days it's so bad. I can't understand.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you say you can cause God pain. You better be careful.
Are you back with Simon?
No, he's gone. He's like not even in the room anymore.
He's floating in cyberspace, huh?
Yeah, I'm texting him. I'm not sure it matters. He knows that there's a problem.
Why don't, yeah, call him so he hears it.
Well, yeah, I just texted him on 2 separate threads.
Ring his phone, maybe he'll hear it. He'll know that because sometimes you can't tell somebody texts him.
I just tried calling him and he's not answering, but maybe he probably knows there's a problem.
It's such an interesting concept. It's when we go into Golos, he goes, the Abishter goes in with us. It's such a beautiful concept.
Yeah, very. Well, he's everywhere, so. But then it raises the question, the Hester Panimus question. You know, it's still being recorded, the session. Well, no, it says live. I don't know what that means it's being
It says
recorded.
live, but it doesn't say recording, I don't think.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think it can record without him being here. I did try calling him. Sri, you want to try calling him or?
Yeah, I can try. He's not answering. No. I don't know what to do now. Drive over to his house. No, he probably recognized it. He's probably trying to start the whole thing all over.
You guys there?
Yes.
Yes, we're here.
What happened?
Technology is not as advanced as Ayin Beis. What can I tell you?
And maybe we should look at Ayin Beis and find out the reason.
I don't know. My internet must have gone down. It happens. I don't know what to tell you. I had to start the router. I don't know. Now the thing is the recording going on? I don't even know.
No,
You shut that off, I think, at one point.
you have to restart it.
Yeah.
It looks to me like it's recording.
It says live. Yeah,
It says live. It says YouTube, but it doesn't say recording. I don't think. Maybe.
it could be.
Okay.
Sorry about that. What can I tell you? It was not in my control.
I mean, it's still streaming. I don't know if that means it's being recorded. I imagine it does on YouTube.
Yeah, but you want to record it on the WhatsApp too, right?
I'll start the new recording. It's streaming is continued because I never stopped the stream. So I'll just start a new recording and we'll have to combine the two. Okay. I'm starting a new recording now. Okay, my friends. So I'll just go over I don't remember what the last thing I said was, but I was talking about the dual process that God creates existence a certain way, and he embedded it in it, the very concept that we have an impact on God himself and on all the levels of the cosmic order. So there's a real relationship. I said all that. You all heard that before, right? I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yes.
Okay. And that because intuitively you would think there's one God up there, we're down here, and that's that. You need Chassidus to explain that it's more complicated than that. It's not just a one-way street, that God is the creator and we are the subjects. We are empowered, and that's the key thing, that our Aveda does affect the highest levels of making a dira b'tachtenim, and that's why we are crucial. We are not dispensable here. So in this itself, so the first point he made here is that our Hiseder is below. So when we call, there's a return, call and return. It's a back and forth relationship. And now he's going to go and spell it out even more deeper. In the parentheses, we're continuing. So the first thing he said was his Seder is below, creates a Seder above, and that's like the tzilcha, like a shadow. And I elaborated on that before. The gamzais, I'm continuing in the parentheses, the line Seder, the gamzais, additionally, shakelim oisim tmuna b'ha'er. So now he's saying the kelim actually create an image. They like engrave an image in the oir. To just visualize what this means would be that you can say, for example, when you put colorless liquid into a tinted glass, right? So the tint, only to us it appears. If it's tinted blue, if the glass is blue, if the test tube is blue, or red, or yellow, or green, so the liquid inside did not change color. You didn't create an image in the liquid. You create an image for the observer. To you, it looks like red water or red liquid or blue liquid. But no real tmuna was made inside the oir. So you could argue that when the oir goes into the keli, yes, they work together, but the oir remains aloof, so to speak, apart. So no, Chassidus says that the keli actually makes a tmuna in the oir. It actually, I don't say the word engrave, he doesn't say chekika, he says oisa, it imparts, it's similar to like a picture. You take a picture, the negative, there's an actual image on the negative. Initially, the negative was just a plain shapeless film. But now, when you took a picture, it created a tmuna on the negative. So he's saying here that the oiris of Lakus in Atzilus and so on are actually impacted by the Aveda of the Kelim. And that's a very critical point. So it's Esim Tmuna Ba'ir. The Eir is Blima. The Eir on itself, on its own, is Blima. We say Esesri is Blima without substance. The Eir is shapeless on its own. V'Tmuna Ba'ir Nasa Yedei Kelim. And the Tmuna and the Eir happens through the containers. Commission is Barlil, as was explained earlier, and quite extensively in different parts of Ayin Beis earlier. Let me just give it as an example to make it practical. When an idea is being conveyed through words, like right now, I'm conveying an idea and I'm speaking particular words that I'm using to describe the idea that we're discussing. Or in writing, you see words on a page like we're learning here. The words are describing an idea. The idea is the oir, the concept. The words that are either dibur, the words of dibur, or the words of maisa, the words of speech, or the words of in writing, are the kelim. Now the words on their own, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, doesn't say anything. It's just letters. They have to be combined into words, and the words have to be combined into sentences to make sense. So the kelim on their own need to have a message that they're conveying. But the question is, does the kelim have an impact on the message as well? So I think it was the great marketing genius, what was his name, McLuhan, who said that today the medium is the message. So the fact of the matter is, if somebody explains an idea well with the right words, the words actually create an image in the light. It's not just an abstract idea. The words actually give shape and form and a certain, even a drama, if you wish, and passion to the oir. So you could have two people conveying the same idea, the same oir, and one is clearly really comes alive, and the other is very dry or not even what's the word? It's not, doesn't arouse any passion or excitement. Why? The oir is the same, like I said, the colorless liquid, because it's not the case, because the kelim do affect the oir. And if the oir is conveyed through the right kelim, the oir itself takes on the shape of those containers. So it's the way the containers behave, they actually have an impact on the oir. So in addition to what he said before, that our love below stimulates love from above, the kelim actually shape the oir, that the oir should assume the image of the containers. Now this is fascinating because you'll soon see there's the other way around, where the oir transfers its image to the kelim, where the kelim assume the image of the oir. Basically, the words are assuming the image of the idea. But here he's talking about how the energy, the oir, is assuming the image of the container. There's more to explain, but I just wanted to just give a little taste of it, and I'm going to elaborate more in the coming classes. But that's what he just said. But I'll read a little more. Maybe I'll see if I can finish the parentheses, at least, because we did have some delay here. Okay. So he says, "V'cheinu b'chlol sha'ir," and so is it with the general divine energy. U'kamoshin yisboil le'il be'in kamayim aponim el aponim. I mentioned it before. So in volume 2, there was a whole section where he spoke about. So the verse says like this: Kamayim aponim leponim, or kamayim aponim el aponim, kain leva adam lo adam. Just as kamayim, a face is reflected, your face is reflected in the water. So a face is reflected. Kamayim aponim leponim, just like water is to a. Let me translate it exact. Kamayim aponim leponim. Just as water reflects a face to a face, because it reflects the face back to you. Like if you're looking water, you see the face reflecting back. So too, the heart of a person is reflected in another person's heart. So when someone reaches out to you with their heart, like water, it will reflect back to you. So he explained that this is the idea. This is both mamayla lamata, mamata lamayla. But mamata lamayla means that because God created us in a way that He wants us, our heart, to impact Him. So therefore, the oir is like, it becomes like a mirror image to our avodah. That's the extent of our avodah impacts existence. That's why, like we learned earlier, that when we take our kalim, our physical world, and we direct it toward godliness, that in turn has an impact on godliness itself as well, that it also mirrors back to us that which we gave to it. V'kvan is bar le'il, and was explained earlier, actually mentioned it in the last page on the bottom, or close to the bottom. He said like this: "Kvan is bar le'il, the b'chinas mada adam lamayla, the likeness of man above. Hu mashi Yisrael ola b'machshava." What does that mean? Mada adam lamayla. It means it's how God envisions the neshamas. Yisrael ola b'machshava. So when the thought, like a father who's envisioning his child before the child is born, this example is actually given by the Magi back on page 896. He says an example for it, he says, is like a father who imagines his child well, he said it somewhere there. I have to find it. Anyway, before a child is born, a parent imagines the image of the child that will be. So God imagined the image. So he said that is what we learned is Adam Mara Adam Lamaila Yisrael Ol Machshava. Val Cain, because he envisioned us and therefore an our avodah, so therefore it also works the other way around. In other words, our being is reflected within him. So based on that, because God envisioned us, which means that we are part of his being, so when we do our avodah through our kelim, he says, it causes an image. The image is assumed by the oir, commensurate to the kelim of the neshamas below, of the neshamas here. The zehu. This is important to qualify. Which level of oir are we talking about? We're not talking about etzem oir, because etzem oir is higher than any type of image altogether. This is zehu oir hashayach el kelim. We're talking to the oir that relates to the containers, that they're already relating to the containers. So the containers create an image in them. We're talking about the oir that its transmission is through the containers. That the kelim, like I explained before, the example of the letters and the words, they're metayir, they describe and reveal. So here you have an abstract light or an abstract idea, and the kelim, they describe and reveal this oir, and they cause in it a toyar, a description, and a tmuna, and an image. So so like I said before with the negative, or think of the white light that's shining, that's projecting on a wall, and you put a film, so then the light shines through the film, and on the wall now you see a light made of the film, meaning the film is shaping the light. Now we're not talking about the very essence of the light, we're talking about the light as it shines through the kelim, like he says, so the kelim create a tmuna in the light. Even though there you could say it's like the colorless liquid in tinted glass, but the fact is the light on this side of the picture, the light is now being shaped by the kelim. However you explain it. But the core level of energy, of light, of revelation, that's higher than containers, and they come from a mile lamata, not lamata. We're not talking about that which we generate. That when you do after Shashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafsha b'chol ma'idecha, so your awakening, stimulation of love, in turn draws love from above. That's the oir that relates to the kelim. But the oir that's higher than kelim, and its hamshach is mamayl lamata. Remember we spoke about the neshamas of Atzilus, that it goes mamayl lamata. Eina kelim esim bem tmuna. There the containers do not create an image, because that's the other way around. That's coming from the top down. On the contrary, there's the other way around. There it's according to the oir, is the image within the container, as shall be explained with God's help with Torah. We're speaking out tefillah, davening, which is from the bottom up. So we ask for our needs and we cry out with love and passion and reverence and so on. That draws down, and not just draws down, like he said, it also creates an image above. In other words, our request, our call, actually shapes the oil that enters into the kelim, and that draws it down. Here, we're talking the oil that's higher than that, that's going the other way around. There, the divine image above is shaping the image below. And the truth is, we need both. Because as I said with the interface, we're created in the divine image. So we want to connect to the way God is on God's terms. But there's also how God relates to us on our terms. And that's how godliness manifests, Eris and Kalim, and that's the Mamata Lamaila. And there you have the interface in this fullest sense of the word, that we have both dimensions, what it looks like above and what it looks like below. So when Hashem said, for example, to Moshe Rabbeinu, no one can see me and live. And then he said, I will show you my back, but my face you will not see. And as I've explained many times, the Rebbe's interpretation, the Ponim Yofis interprets as well, that God is saying, you will see my back and my face. My back you will see directly on your terms. My face you will see on my terms, which means you'll see it by not looking. So in other words, there's two ways to connect to the divine. One is what we eliminate and what's the word I want to say? We suspend our image of God and we allow ourselves to appreciate God on his terms. Or is the other way around, that God suspends, so to speak, his purest form, and he manifests in our terms in a way that we can relate to him. So it really comes down to having both. You want to have times where you connect to God on God's terms, God's image, and we are shaped by his image. And then there's things that God relates to us, and his presence is shaped by our image. And it's really a symbiotic relationship. Both are necessary. Basically, the difference between mamata lamayla, mamayla lamata, or tefillah and Torah, as he just said here. So there's a lot more going on here than what meets the eye, and I will elaborate more. But I'm going to stop here at the end of this parenthesis, and we will talk more about this, but I want to stop if anybody wants to ask anything. Pretty powerful stuff, huh?
Like the 3 months, which I don't exactly understand, of Elul and Tishrei. You go Matla Mile, one follows the other, and finally you get it all on Sukkah. So brings that to mind. I don't know if that's accurate.
V'daidi li is mamata lamayla. Anila daidi, v'daidi li. That we call I am to my beloved, and then my beloved is to me. That's the response. That's mamata lamayla. But in the month of Nisan, we say the opposite. V'daidi li v'ani loy.
Yeah, I remember learning this year.
Yeah.
Rabbi Jacobson, is it fair to say that it's implied from what we just learned that it's the Birurim, basically it's like a cloudy water, the way I would imagine it. And the way we do Birurim and the way we do Avodah, slowly we're clearing all this gunk, as if it were, and that's how we could be able to see our image and Hashem's image being like an actual mirror image through Avodah. Is that fair to say?
Can you repeat that? I didn't understand.
Okay, so we just mentioned that, let's say if we're looking into a mirror or we're looking into a water, we're seeing the same image. Whatever we do here, it's basically mirrored above. What I'm saying is it's kind of implied that by our actions, like if we have a person has a lot of sins or have a lot of things that they need to fix, it's as if it's a cloudy water or a dirty mirror. And by process of the Birurim and doing all the we did all these processes, we're actually cleaning out the junk, so as if it were to make the image as clear as possible. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but it's not what he's saying here altogether. He's not referring to that. So can you imply from that?
Is it implied?
Look, like the story implied, isn't it? Something on the Alter Rebbe. If a person shows a sour face will be shown back to him, if that's what you mean. here the focus is obviously on the positive. But yes, you're asking, we spoke earlier that when a person transgresses, they are also weaken the energy above. So if that's what you mean, yes, that we, but I don't know about the cloudy water. I'm not sure how to apply that. I would just say that if our face, meaning our actions, are not positive, we also cause above a weakening of divine energy. Like when we sinas chinam, the baseless hatred below, caused the Shekhinah to be removed from the Beis Hamikdash and the destruction of it. If that's what you mean, that's the idea here. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
This Inyan of from Lamayla Lamata, and it's this last part of the sentence, Kfi Ofena Orhu Tmunas Akeli. I thought that the capacity of a keli to bring in light and have a gilui depends on the refinement of the keli. So if you can have tons of light shining on the keli is not capable of receiving it. It's not going to be a complete reflection. So I'm a little confused by that statement.
When a person learns Torah, which is Mamay Lamata, even if they are not yet through their Avodah Mamat Lamayla completely refined, the Torah is giving them a model of how to live your life. So when you look at the Torah, you let's say read the story of Avram Avinu, Abraham, the chesed that he showed. So we have now from Lamayla Lamata, we have a template, a model, a model of what chesed is. So then that in turn can shape our chesed and create an image for us that is imprinted that we should emulate that. That's Mamayla Lamata. Mamata Lamayla is when you cry out from the darkness in davening and you're crying out to God and you're, let's say, showing love to God that's initiated by you, not from the Torah, from the template. That's Mamata Lamayla. So he's speaking about two different ways, like I explained. Think about it in very practical terms. I explained there's two ways to relate to God. Either we are looking to God and we are trying to align ourselves to God's midas, and mahu chanon, avata chanon, just as God is compassionate, we're compassionate, or we're initiating from the bottom up, and that also that causes the keli to create an image in the air. Each one has a quality of their own. One was more internalized, like I explained at length, in the keli, and it's initiated by the keli because it's coming from below. And the other one is more powerful because it's actually a higher revelation. It's coming from above. And that's why in Judaism, you need both Torah and Tefillah. You need Mamat L'mayla and Mamayla L'mata, and we have both every day. We do both. And the focus mostly here has been Mamata L'mayla, as he's coming back to the Magid, that we start with Chashchus, we start from darkness and we come to light. But we've also learned that there's also the other way around, like by the Neshamas of Atzilus, or through Torah, like he just said, he'll explain with God's help more length later, and he will. Starting on page, top of page 1350, which is just 2 pages away, is going to start a whole discussion on the top down, Mamayla Lamata, how that avodah works.
Got it. Thank you very much for clarifying.
Okay. Good. So we'll stop here, close to the bottom of page 1348.